The day has finally arrived. It is time for the rematch between the Wisconsin Badgers and the BYU Cougars. Breaking down who I think are the keys in this game, as I realize.
I did not quite have the mic. There we go. We got the mic back. We got the better mic working now. Hopefully that's better for y'all. But the key players for BYU, the key absences coming up for BYU, and why this is something close to a must-win game, a must-capitalize on game for Wisconsin basketball today on Talking Badgers. Yeah. Welcome back in to Talking Badgers, powered by BadgerNotes.com. I'm your host, Kedrick Stumbris. You can find me on all the various social medias, Blue Sky, the website formerly known as Twitter, Instagram, if you like that, if that's your drink of choice, so to speak, at Kedrick Stumbris. Find the show at Talking Badgers on the website formerly known as Twitter, but more importantly on YouTube, youtube.com/@TalkingBadgers, and you can find out when I'm going live from this random hotel room at 2:15 in the morning. Yeah, sure, why not? Not that I expect any of you to join me at this absurd hour, but you'll get this in your feed right away. You'll get it in your feed right away as we break down this Wisconsin basketball game that's being played at just an absurd hour of the day. I mean, it's what, 13 hours from now as I'm talking, and part of the reason it's an absurd hour of the day, 13 hours from now, is because I am also speaking at an absurd hour of the day. But that's my fault, not Wisconsin's, not BYU's. Apparently BYU, which is hosting this game at 2 p.m. local time, 3 p.m. Central in Salt Lake City. Kevin Young on his media call this week, the head coach of the BYU Cougars, said it was not really up to him. This was beyond his control, but so be it. You know, it's a shared building between the Utah Mammoth and the Utah Jazz, and for a few games this season with the BYU Cougars. So they take their games where they can get them. But I got some thoughts on what Wisconsin needs to do to win this game. And of course, it starts with slowing down the one, the only AJ Dybantsa. AJ Dybantsa for BYU, the not presumptive number one overall pick in the draft in this upcoming NBA draft 2026, but a potential number one overall pick in this upcoming 2026 NBA draft. He is a forward to be sure. He is shooting. He's given a little bit of a sneaky, like, does he have an outside shot? Is this the thing that can happen? If there's a reason Dybantsa doesn't go number one overall, it's because he doesn't have an outside shot. And that's not to take anything away from Darren Peterson, Kansas Jayhawk, and also brother of Wisconsin Badgers defensive lineman Daryl Peterson. But Dybantsa, if he's able to develop an outside shot, he is something of an athletic freak who should be on everybody's draft boards, number one, with a bullet. Athletic, freaky, explosive, like pick any of the superlatives you like. He is that dude. And 6'9", a little bit over 200 pounds. He's not like the biggest dude, but at his age, he also reclassified from 2026 to 2025, became the number one overall rated prospect in the class of 2025 when he reclassified, 2025 McDonald's All-American. At that age, at that young, he's got a lot of room to grow into what is already an impressive body and a guy who can throw that weight around. And like I was mentioning, kind of a sneaky outside shot so far. He's shooting 4 of 10 from beyond the arc this season. I don't think that's consistent, but hey, if it is, that presents a huge matchup nightmare for teams along the way. And he's at least causing trouble for teams and for a Wisconsin team that has had issues defending on the interior from time to time this year. It's more, having issues defending without fouling. I think Alexis Bieliauskas in particular has gotten better at this throughout the year so far. If you just look at his growth just from the red-white scrimmage to today, I think it's just been a tremendous explosion for the reserve forward for Wisconsin basketball. Him, Will Garlock, who, man, could be outmatched in that freshman on freshman matchup. But Will Garlock is going to have to step up. But really, I think a lot of what's going to have to step up is from Wisconsin's starting front court here. Outside of Wisconsin's starting front court, they have had issues defending the interior without fouling so far this season, and that was a concern coming into the season. We knew that was a concern coming into the season, and nothing has changed. AJ Dybantsa, meanwhile, is drawing over 6 fouls per game. That's a potential problem for Wisconsin. And if Wisconsin gets into foul trouble early, this one has a chance to get out of hand. There's a case to be made for how that does not happen, because look, BYU is going to be down some bodies in this game. That seems very obvious, but you could say this game starts and ends with, what does AJ Dybantsa do? I don't think that's totally fair, because I think there certainly is a recipe for success for BYU outside of AJ Dybantsa, but he is something of number one to watch, and it's not particularly close. But outside of him, gotta watch Rob Wright. Rob Wright, who was something of a surprise transfer this offseason from Baylor. All the reporting seemed to indicate that he had, it was something close to a Xavier Lucas situation for our Wisconsin football fans out there. All the reporting seemed to indicate that this other former 5-star prospect, a sophomore this year in college basketball, had a deal agreed to in principle in some form with the Baylor Bears to return, and ended up getting swooped away, and now he is at BYU, and a guy who was really impressive in his 1 year under Scott Drew and the Baylor Bears, and he makes the in-conference transfer over to BYU, over to Provo, and he has looked the part so far. This is the ball dominant guard, and a guy who is young, and I think complements Dybantsa really, really, really well. Those two guys get the lion's share of the possessions, along with a third that we'll get to momentarily. But with those guys, the rebounding that Dybantsa brings, the assists that Rob Wright brings, Rob Wright, who doesn't foul very often, that's something that he was also good at Baylor as well. Just really good at defending without fouling. He's a guy who I think is going to cause some trouble for Wisconsin. And look, I think that's a really fun matchup between he and Nick Boyd potentially going at it throughout the night. I wonder what kind of switching is done there between Rob Wright. Does Andrew Rohde get that primary primary defensive assignment there? Sorry, I can't talk. Because there's a lot of guys on the wing that I think it makes a lot of sense for Rohde to defend. And again, one of them might not be available in this game, but Rohde could have his way and potentially even have a Dybantsa assignment from time to time, even if that is not exactly optimal. Rohde certainly has the length to hold his own in that assignment, even if it's suboptimal. And those switches, the way BYU can get to you, they like to go to this 4-guard lineup from time to time. Kevin Young also spoke about it this weekend in his media call that to deal with some of Wisconsin's length, they can go to one of these smaller looks, and that has some give and take between that and a Wisconsin team that has been pretty good on the glass this season. And it's going to be a matchup where both sides are going to be disadvantaged at times, depending on what kind of look they give. And that should make for a fairly fascinating game. Along with Rob Wright, then, is Richie Saunders, who Wisconsin Badgers fans should be familiar with after last year's matchup in Denver in the round of 32. Richie Saunders, of course, was suited up in that game as well. He contributed 25 points on 6 of 12 shooting from inside the arc, and 3 of 4 from beyond it, for 4 perfect on rebounds and 6 offensive boards. That's a really good performance. He's still that guy that offensive boards is probably not what he is going to replicate. That's not exactly his game. He's a guy who can go up and grab a couple of them from time to time, but keep in mind those 6 offensive rebounds that Richie Saunders grabbed in that game last year in Denver was a career high for that Utah native. He's a guy who can really shoot the heck out of the ball. He can really shoot the lights out of the ball. I mean, all Wisconsin fans who watched that game should know it. He was shooting, whatever it was, 43% from beyond the arc a season ago, and not quite hitting that yet. But at volume, I suppose we will wait and see. But still, going to be really good. Going to take a lot of shots. In 4 games, he has already attempted 26 threes. That's I can imagine that he's going to get those numbers up there, because he's only averaging a little over 2 made threes per game so far, and Richie Saunders is going to want to do more than that this upcoming game. But I'm fascinated to see what this all looks like between Wisconsin, BYU, and where and how Wisconsin might be able to steal a couple of possessions or steal a couple of shots, because Wisconsin has been a really, really, really good offensive rebounding team thus far, and BYU has not been so great on the offensive glass. BYU only ranks 133rd in offensive rebounding rate so far. Wisconsin is 24th in the country on the offensive glass in rebound rates. It's been a really impressive development, and to put that into perspective, right? Through 4 games against mid to low major opponents, I'm not, I'm going to compare apples to apples here. Against mid to major opponents, Wisconsin's first 4 games against mid and low major opponents this season versus last season. This season, they have missed 127 shots from the field. Last season, Wisconsin missed 123 shots from the field. Its first 4 games against mid to low major opponents. So roughly the same number. Wisconsin has 23 more offensive rebounds this season through 4 games against low and mid-major competition. Wisconsin is also, through 4 games, scoring at a significantly higher clip against a relatively similar slate of opponents through 4 games. And even if you include, even if you want to throw the mid-major, low-major component out the window and include last year's Arizona game where Wisconsin scored over 100 points in that one, so it helps last year's team in driving up that average. Wisconsin is still outscoring last year's team through 4 games by a fairly significant margin. And a lot of it is because they are getting these extra shots, a lot of them on missed threes. I mentioned that against Ball State, Wisconsin rebounded on the offensive glass 15 shots. 12 of those were on missed threes. It wasn't as stark a share on their offensive rebounds that came, not as stark of a share of those came from missed threes in their most recent game against SIUE, but still that is a feature of this Wisconsin Badgers basketball team. As Greg Gard said, this is a different emphasis for them, and it makes sense when the shots are coming out longer. Now, against BYU, is that going to be the same? It's a BYU team that has maybe not lived up to its offensive rebounding potential, its offensive rebounding profile compared to, what Kevin Young led BYU had done a season ago, compared to, what this BYU team that has some length, even if it's not huge. Wisconsin, one of the longest, tallest teams in the country, in the top 10 in that category, according to KenPom. But how much of it is real? And then when it comes to stealing extra possessions, if it's not at the glass defensively, Wisconsin really uses that length to get into passing lanes, to disrupt balls and get deflections and steal balls. Nick Boyd, it gets him into trouble sometimes, but he's really good at applying, ball pressure out on the perimeter. And when they get a steal, Wisconsin gets out and runs. We saw this against SIUE. Wisconsin had 8 steals, and Wisconsin scored on 7 of those ensuing possessions. On those 8 steals Wisconsin scored 18 points. This is a team that can make you pay. And the turnover margin, right now, BYU takes care of the ball pretty well offensively, much like Wisconsin, but BYU doesn't force a lot of turnovers. Wisconsin takes care of the ball offensively and forces a lot of turnovers on defense so far. It makes for the possibility that this Wisconsin team might just have a little bit of extra something to where they can take advantage of that in that matchup if they're not, getting worked in the paint, which I think is still an open question. And Debanza is going to present matchup problems to everybody, but what does it look like if he doesn't have his starting center alongside of it? And that looks to be what the case is going to be today against BYU for Wisconsin. Wisconsin is not going to have to face the front court duo of both AJ Debanza and Kevin Keita. Kevin Keita is BYU's best rim protector by far. And last time out against UConn, BYU really suffered when Kevin Keita left roughly midway through the game. He only played 8 minutes before he left in the first half, came to a collision, seemed to bust up, some upper shoulder, head combination, upper body injury. And Kevin Young really non-committal to his status, saying, here's good things, but it's day to day. And they don't know. He said, he's in more of a day-to-day type thing, where his words, he's in more of a day-to-day type thing, which makes me think it's something of a head injury, purely speculative, just because, that's harder to assess day-to-day, exactly what you're going to get. That'd be my guess behind those words, but impossible to say. It may be recklessly I am speaking. But look, it doesn't sound like he's going to be available. And if he is, there's certainly big questions about, just how 100% is he? Is it just the head? Is it the shoulder? What does it all look like for a guy who plays a really, really, really big role on defending the interior for that team, compared to, a team in Wisconsin that has been really good on the offensive glass? A team in Wisconsin that has a Nolan Winter who's averaging 14 and 9. What does that look like? And then also for BYU, a bit of a tragic situation, so to speak. Yes, tragic for Kennard Davis, but tragic for the other people around him on the road. He's in court this past week, pleads not guilty to charges related to marijuana possession and driving under the influence after a car crash in Provo. Last week, he sat out BYU's last two games. Kevin Young, it doesn't sound like he knows a lot about the university's situation. He's suspended and away from the team for the time being, and not a lot of ideas about whether or not he would be available. Kevin Young, when he was asked about it, says, I think it's safe to, he was asked if it's safe to assume that Kennard Davis will not play on Friday. And Kevin Young starts by saying, I think it's safe, then kind of cuts himself off and says, but I also think there's a lot of stuff being sorted out. Reads to me like he maybe said more than he wanted to, and then wanted to backtrack to give a little bit of gray space there. A little bit of gamesmanship never hurt anybody. But I'm very curious to see what Wisconsin looks like in this matchup, given that I don't know that BYU is going to be at full strength. It certainly sounds like BYU is not going to be at full strength. And against a team like this, which, regardless of their availability today, is going to be a very good team, is going to have a very good resume come Selection Sunday, is going to be a team that Wisconsin will benefit greatly from having a win, not strictly on the road, not in a campus environment, but having a win in I presume, a relatively hostile environment. Having a win against that BYU team will certainly be a quad one win. Could be an upper echelon win for Wisconsin. There's not a lot of other opportunities like this on Wisconsin's resume against what could be, top 10, top 15-ish teams this season. BYU is rated rated ninth in the AP poll. I think they're 15th or right around there. I think they're 15th in Bart Torvik in the predictives and 16th at KenPom. Wisconsin, I think, is just above BYU at KenPom right now. But this rates as a top 20 team and going on the road with a little bit of air quotes around that, right? Because of the campus environment, not campus environment of it all. And getting that win, it's going to mean a lot because it's not going to say on Wisconsin's team sheet. Wisconsin's not going to get dinged for this game being in November. Your games in November count as much as your games in March. It's not going to matter if BYU wasn't at full strength. What is going to matter is that this BYU team is going to look like a really good team at the end of the year, and Wisconsin has a chance tonight, this afternoon, inside the Delta Center to get a win that is most likely going to age really, really, really well. And when some of the other opponents on Wisconsin's schedule, a Providence, a Villanova, have not looked so good, TCU has not looked so good. TCU, of course, a maybe. Wisconsin going to play TCU or Florida in the second game of that holiday tournament in San Diego next week. Florida's probably a good opponent for Wisconsin regardless, but some of these other non-con games, not Wisconsin's fault, but right now they don't look like as impressive opponents as they did on day one. And that just increases, the importance of winning games like this against BYU. Because, you're going to get to go on the road. If you're Wisconsin, you're going to get to go on the road and play Michigan. You're going to get to go on the road and play Purdue on Purdue's senior day. And I don't think there are really, those might be the two other, best resume point wins Wisconsin will have the opportunity to go get this season. I am not sure there are going to be other ones. Illinois is going to be up there too, of course, Illinois on the road. This is one of a handful of games for Wisconsin where if you want to put a bullet, a gold star on your NCAA tournament resume, this is it. This is it. All the games matter. All the games matter for March. That's why we say, you get your flowers for winning in March, unless you're one of a handful of programs. I don't ding you too hard for faltering from time to time, but that's a different conversation that I'm sure is going to make a lot of people mad. But all these games matter. All these games matter for your NCAA tournament resume, even if you don't think they do now. They do. They matter a lot. So Wisconsin, see what they can do today. I keep wanting to say tonight. Today, inside the Delta Center. Very excited to see, what Wisconsin does. Teams that are going to shoot the heck out of the three. Austin Rapp, I think, is going to be tested tremendously defensively, but also, if he can get that pump fake going, he can do some damage inside himself, particularly with Keita presumably out of the lineup. Really looking forward to seeing what this one does. And I don't think I've said John Blackwell's name at all, but what a coming out party he could potentially have after Wisconsin less than 8 months ago fell one John Tonje shot shy of reaching the Sweet 16 for the first time in 8 seasons. We'll see what they do against BYU, and we'll talk to you after that.